Okay, I think we are live now. So I welcome anyone outside to our webinar on Turkey organized by the International Press Institute, IPI. As you know, part of the Free Turkish Journalists project. This one is organized by both the German and the Turkish national committees. There's more coming up next week already. I might tell you a bit more about that towards the end of our today's discussion. Our subject today is supporting press freedom in Turkey under the German EU presidency. And you, our audience, you are invited to take part in our discussion by sending questions either on the chat tool that you find in the Zoom bar down there, or the question and answer tool. And I will try to pass on your question to the panelists during our discussion. My name is Jörg Brase. I'm the correspondent of German national TV broadcaster ZDF on Turkey and Iran. I'm based in Istanbul, but currently talking to you from Berlin. And these are the panelists of our today's discussion. I would like to start with the ladies first in alphabetical order, if you don't mind. So we start with Banu Güven. She's a Turkish journalist. She worked for, amongst others, for the Turkish newspaper Milliyet and for the news channel NTV for 14 years before she actually got fired due to a dispute on one of her talk show formats. Maybe we can elaborate on that a bit later. Now she works for Deutsche Welle Turkish service, and she also presents a radio program called Turkey Uncensored for the national public radio station WDR. She left Turkey in 2018 and now lives in Germany. Banu, welcome to our panel. Our next panelist is Mrs. Suzanne Schutz. She joined the Foreign Federal Office in 1989, worked for various directorates general in Bonn and Berlin and various German embassies. From 2016 to 19, she was the German ambassador to Albania. In 2019, she returned to Berlin, became the director for the Southeastern Europe, Turkey, and EFTA states, OSCE, and Council of Europe Directorate in the German Foreign Office. Welcome to our panel, Mrs. Schutz. And now for the gentlemen. We have Mr. Sergei Lagodinsky. He is a German lawyer and political commentator for various German and international media. Since 2019, he's a member of the European Parliament for the group of the Greens European Free Alliance. His focus is on human rights and press freedom, and he's the vice chair of the Committee on Legal Affairs and chair of the delegation to the EU-Turkey Joint Parliamentary Committee. Mr. Lagodinsky will have to join another web conference in about 15 to 20 minutes. So thanks for granting your time to us, and welcome to the panel. And last not least, Mr. Cem Özdemir. He's got a long political career. He joined the Green Party when he was 16, became a member of the Federal Parliament in 1994 as one of the first parliamentarians with a so-called migration background, which also became one of his main topics in politics. He was a member of European Parliament for 5 years. He was one of the chairmen of the Green Party for 10 years, back to Bundestag since 2013. And if I may say so, maybe the Turkish government's most favorite enemy, at least if it comes to the German parliamentarians. I don't know, maybe just Sabem Daden of the left party is topping you. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's start with you, Mr. Özdemir. We are going to see an EU summit coming up tomorrow. Do you think that the EU at the moment is doing enough to support press freedom in Turkey?
First of all, hello everybody, and it's a pleasure, and let me thank the IPI for making this possible and reminding the fate of journalists in Turkey, because unfortunately that is not mentioned enough, and it's very crucial that we use every opportunity to highlight the situation of your colleagues of journalists who are in prison in Turkey. But let me come back to your question. I think we could do more, we have to do more. Unfortunately, the European Union is divided when it comes to Turkey. We have on one side France, Greece, and obviously the Republic of Cyprus for obvious reasons. who favor a more harsh position vis-a-vis Turkey, and we have Germany on the other side, maybe Poland and some other member states, and maybe Italy, who are in favor of a more mild position vis-a-vis Turkey. The second camp, in particular my own country, Germany, sometimes oversees that, it's like we want to negotiate with Turkey based on shared rules. But if your partner on the other side of the table ignores those rules, well, let me give you a more practical example. Let's say we play soccer and the other side plays rugby. Obviously, you will have a problem, and that's the current situation. So I think the first goal should be to bring the European Union together and unite on one position vis-a-vis Turkey. That's important because we, as the fourth largest country with a huge Turkish community, the fourth largest economy vis-a-vis the economy in the world, and with a huge Turkish community in Germany, are not enough to push Turkey to free journalists, to free opposition politicians and others from Turkish prisons and make the Turkish foreign policy a more reasonable Turkish policy. We need the European Union. I'm sure Sergei can say a lot more about where the European Union stands there. So I think the German government should sit together with the French partners, with other partners in the European Union, make sure that we have a clear voice. Whoever Turkish politicians meet, they should hear the same message. And that should be a clear message. You have to free Selahattin Demirtas and other politicians. You have to free Osman Kavala and other representatives of the civil society. You have to free Ahmet Altan and all the other journalists. And that should be crucial. And let me add one more point. And the same, I believe, should be said vis-a-vis the Turkish foreign policy in Eastern Mediterranean, but as well currently vis-a-vis the Caucasus.
Okay, let's pass on to Mr. Lagodinsky. Mr. Özdemir already raised the question of how unified is the European Union if it comes to Turkey, and do you really think, and what are the signals that you receive from within, let's say, the EU Parliament if it comes to making Turkey or press freedom in Turkey one of the main topics of the German EU presidency?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure that having the press freedom as the main priority of the German presidency is something tangible. And don't forget, the German presidency is not so long anymore. We will be having the end of the German presidency is already Christmas. And but what I think is important is that the German presidency manages the balancing act, and I think this is important also for us in the European Parliament, between, on the one hand, an even-handed and fair approach to Turkish society and to Turkish role and to Turkish future. Because I must be honest with you, in the European Parliament, there is a large majority which can be easily activated in a kind of an anti-Turkey reflex. By Turkey meaning Turkey as a whole, not Erdogan, just Turkey as a society. And you know how it is very easy to do. Yeah, so some culturalists would join this grand coalition. Of course, countries who justifiably faring also geopolitically, they're being scolded and being threatened by war. So suddenly we have two members of the European Union who are actually realistically threatened, but also have a certain historical baggage and certain attitudes vis-a-vis Turkey, and so on and so forth. And I think it is important to be clear. And in German we have this, and you would know we have this, I think, my favorite term, Haltung. Yeah, it's a clear compass where we know where we stand, and we don't stand where we bash Turkey, but we stand there where we draw red lines. And this is something that I wish from the German presidency, but from any Democrat in the European Union. Our red line is where civil rights and human rights in Turkey are being destroyed systematically by the Turkish politics. And rule of law is being demolished by the Turkish politics. I'm just coming from a Penn Club discussion on rule of law in Turkey. It's also a very tragic and a very sad story. So I think, to be honest, that we are talking about sticks sometimes on wrong occasions. I think that solidarity with Greece and with Cyprus is very important. But I wonder why we start talking about sanctions when it is about gas conflicts. Why don't we start talking about sanctions, if you want to talk about sanctions, when it is about human rights and when it is about press freedom? That's the point, I think, where it would be interesting to see how we can exert more pressure on that. And here in the conflict that we are seeing now, which is escalating, I don't see that many actors talking about human rights and rule of law. We talk about gas. So I would urge us to have this compass, right? To have this attitude. And if we have it, then we know what we want. And what we want is a democracy, is a rule of law country for the Turkish society. And also, I still haven't given up on a European future and on a European perspective for the Turkish society, whatever shading and whatever form you wanna have it. But for that, we have to continue fighting, and the German presidency should continue fighting and not just being frozen because they're afraid of refugees threats or whatever threats are coming from Ankara. We still have our priorities, and priorities should be civil and human rights and rule of law.
But have you seen any progress if it comes to putting pressure on Turkey on behalf of human rights or press freedom, or would you say that the first half of the German presidency was already wasted on that issue?
To be honest, I never invested a lot of hope into German presidency on the issue of human rights, civil rights, and rule of law. I don't know how Jem sees it, or Banu, or other participants. I don't think it's realistic to expect that one government will take it over and will just make 180 or whatever, 30 degrees turn on those issues. This is a long process. And that's what I expect from the German government, that it doesn't, switch on now the press freedom until January and then switch it off. Well, we're not presidency anymore. No, Germany has a special relationship with Turkey through the diaspora that Jem mentioned, but also through a long historical and economic ties. And this is the leverage that we should be using regardless of the presidency. And this is the leverage that we have regardless of the presidency. So that's what I expect. But again, it's not about bashing Turkey, right? Or telling and showing and pointing at them that culturally this country is not able, which many people say. I have it here around the corner. I'm now in the parliament. My ID friends, right? Identity and democracy friends. All the populists and fascists, various shadings. They say it's a Muslim country. It will never be able to adopt our rule of law, as if those people ever cared about rule of law and human rights. So a balancing, but a very clear position, regardless of the presidency.
Let's talk a bit about the current situation in Turkey. There was a report that we learned about by the German Foreign Ministry. Mr. Schutz, and this report, as far as I understood, will also be used in deciding upon the asylum applications by Turkish citizens in Germany. Could you just give us a brief idea of the conclusions of that report?
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel, and I appreciate very much that you ask about German position on Turkey. Before I go into the report, I would like to say that indeed, looking at press freedom, looking at human rights and democracy issues in Turkey is something which is definitely not confined to 6 months in 2020. For Germany, this has been an issue all along, definitely ever since 2016, the aborted coup attempt. And we have we've mentioned this issue in our bilateral talks. We have also seen in international fora. We have brought this to the fore, and there have also been public statements, among them also by our Commissioner for Human Rights, Bärbel Kofler, who actually on some issues, on the Kavala case, she has worked together also with her French colleagues. So there is a German-French cooperation also in the human rights issues. And as you mentioned, the report, which somehow was leaked to the media, that's a report which is produced regularly to enable courts to take decisions on whether there are grounds, political grounds for asylum or not. And so all I can say, and this report actually proves it, that we are watching the human rights situation very carefully. We look into individual cases, we look into general tendencies, and of course also as far as media is concerned, we've been watching carefully the developments and the number of journalists who are imprisoned, the number of journalists who are not able to work, journalists who are leaving the country, and Banu Güven is definitely one of the examples of this. So this is something which we find indeed very concerning. And we have voiced this to the Turkish government, and also given support to Turkish civil rights organizations. At the same time, of course, we are aware that Turkey is an important partner. Cem Özdemir mentioned the large number of people with Turkish backgrounds living in Germany. But it's not only that, of course, Turkey is a NATO member. Turkey is still also a candidate to the European Union. And we still hope that there is, we see also the difficult or the increasing difficulties with Turkish politics in the Mediterranean, in Syria and Libya, Iraq, possibly now also in the Southern Caucasus. So we still believe that we need to talk to Turkey. We need to have a basis to talk. And this is now also one of the main focuses of our EU presidency. Turkey has been one of the major topics of the EU presidency, and you mentioned also tomorrow's European Council, which will also be dealing with Turkey. And German government has always argued, we do not want to sever ties to Turkey. We do not want to exclude Turkey as a candidate member, because we still believe that there are many people in Turkey who hope for a European future. We don't want to make it impossible for us to come back to a better future in EU-Turkey relations. But of course, it's clear, and that we've made clear all along, that there will not be normal EU-Turkish relations on the customs union, on other issues which are also of interest to Turkey, as long as the human rights situation is not any better. So that's, having said this, well, it's still a major challenge at the moment for the EU to have a unified position on Turkey, and this is why France and Greece were mentioned. We have tried very hard to talk to both sides and to get both sides, Turkey and Greece, back to the negotiation table. There were these negotiations. They have been interrupted for a while. and we have hopes that very soon there will be a first meeting again between Turkey and Greece, speaking about their different positions, because we believe that also the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Aegean will not be solved if both sides will not be ready to talk. And that's why we've also made it very clear there's solidarity both with Greece and Cyprus within the European Union, but nevertheless we need to find a basis to talk to Turkey, and since March there has been this dialogue led by the Turkish Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu together with the High Representative Josep Borrell, and the idea is that there will be again an enlarged cooperation on the basis of the EU-Turkey declaration, not only on migration but the entire all subjects mentioned in this declaration, but of course only if, first of all, the EU is behind it, and that includes those countries which are critical of Turkey, and also there are indications of a better human rights situation.
Thank you, Mrs. Schutz.
Let me, one issue maybe on sanctions. The issue of sanctions, of course, is on the table, and you have also followed media that Cyprus now is blocking sanctions in the case of Belarus, because Cyprus says we want sanctions against Turkey for their operations in the Eastern Mediterranean. We think sanctions are a legitimate way of making politics. But we still want to give dialogue a chance. We don't think that sanctions in the case of Turkey will actually lead to a solution of the situation. It will not lead to an improvement in the rule of law and human rights situation. So we believe that sanctions are really only the ultimate means in politics. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Schutz. Let me, Banu, before I get to you, let me ask a question to Mr. Lagodinsky, because he has to leave in a couple of minutes. We received actually a comment here by a colleague of mine from Istanbul, Chris Feiland, and he pointed to the fact that a lot of red lines that we actually set up, if it comes to press freedom, had been crossed already during the Gezi protests. So how many red lines actually need to be crossed before actually the European Union or the European Parliament, asked for sanctions against Turkey on that behalf?
I mean, I understand that this is. I agree that there are plenty of problems and plenty of crossing of the red lines. I mean, I was there for the Kavala case in December in the trial. For me, this was already a red line, and there are so many thousands of cases like this. I agree that at some point we will have to say that it's over. We cannot continue like this. I do see, however, that we have a special relationship. Turkey is still a candidate for the EU membership, and we should be very careful in order not to burn bridges. I will be open here. There are many who say we should stop the accession process. If we stop the accession process, we will never restart it. This is that easy. And the question is it in the interest of the society of Turkey? I don't think so, of the civil society of Turkey, not of Erdogan or others. And if we see it from that perspective, then we have a different equation here. And if we're talking about sanctions, I'm open to talking about targeted sanctions. I don't think that sectorial sanctions is something that we should be talking about, but we should be careful on that account. If we introduce targeted sanctions, especially against, some people say against the highest ranking politicians, then whom are we going to talk about regarding opening, closing, accession chapters, etc., etc.? Then it's a totally different game. Then we de facto are closing any prospects for any rapprochement in the future. Because if you introduce sanctions, we see it with Russia, you cannot easily take them back. It's very difficult.
If sanctions is not a tool, as you just said, what tools do we have in order to support press freedom?
Sanctions is a tool. I don't say, as I said, I'm open to that, but it's a tool that we have to consider very wisely. And if you read carefully our resolution regarding Eastern Mediterranean, which I chaired the negotiations between the parties on that resolution myself, and I put it there. This was our wording. We, regarding Eastern Mediterranean, for example, our priority is dialogue, but we call on the Council and on Borrell to be ready, to stand ready with an option and to prepare for sanctions in case dialogue, in this particular case, fails. So this is not an option that is off the table for us. I'm talking about now for the Parliament, and Ambassador Schutz would probably be able to talk more about the presidency or the Council. But I personally think that on that account, we should be using them wisely. Other options we have. I mean, we have a customary. I have a custom union situation. I think this is something where we can easily use this as well. If the Turkish government, who needs customs union and who needs a deep economic associations and cooperation, wants our cooperation on that, we will need, as with any country by the European Union, have a precondition regarding human rights standards and possibly also rule of law standards. This is not a stick, this is a carrot, but maybe we should give this carrot a little stick on the side. So I think this is a very complicated game. This is not Russia. I do also a situation with Russia and policies towards Russia, and there is a difference there. We have here a member candidate, and we will have to decide, do we want, in a long-term perspective, a relationship with Turkey, or do we not want it? If we don't want it, that's a different game. I think we want it, and then we have to play it differently.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lagodinsky. I think you have to leave now for the other web event. Thanks so much for granting our time, and we'll keep on. Thank you so much. Bye. Okay, Banu, finally, let's come to you. I mean, what is your impression, actually, if we're talking about the situation of the press in Turkey? What do you see? Did the situation of journalists, of media in Turkey, did it actually worsen after the outbreak of the corona pandemic? Because many people say that, you know, it was used as a cover-up, you know, for going after journalists and critical media and opposition. And then there's a question that I can also pass on to you by another listener here, and Simone Theis, she asks if what they can actually do, you know, in order to support press freedom in Turkey. Is it by putting pressure through social media, or what tools does the public have, you know, in order to support press freedom?
Thank you very much. A very kind question. I mean, I would say, Simone, maybe pressuring your governments, your own governments, to remind Turkey of its obligations, human rights obligations, and to push Turkey to respect freedom of expression and press freedom. Let me also correct a little thing. I mean, I'm also working in Germany here now for WDR, but I'm doing online interviews, video interviews in both languages mainly. And actually, it feels good to be able to work in a secure environment. And I'm really sad that we've lost this kind of environment in Turkey, and it's been a long time. So it doesn't have directly, like the worsening of the situation doesn't have much to do with the corona pandemic. I mean, it, of course, worsened a couple of things, like people who are speaking out the truth on such an important, lively matter. They are being, I mean, doctors are being persecuted, etc. So this is only one instance where we see how important freedom of expression and media, press freedom in Turkey is. But if you allow me, I would like to say a couple of things. I mean, I agree with Sergey about sanctions and also with Mrs. Schutz. And I would say, regardless of everything, I mean, like, because it's an humanitarian issue, it's a humanitarian crisis, it's a humanitarian obligation of the European Union, of the governments, as Prime Minister Merkel also pointed very clearly a couple of weeks ago after the fire in Moria. The EU should, regardless of any political calculations, really establish a humanly, I would say, immigration policy, refugee policy, solve this problem first of all. And as a result, that's why I'm saying regardless of everything, but as a result, Turkey will not, or let's say President Erdogan won't have this card in his hand anymore. So this is something important. Everybody's, I mean, maybe Turkey has seen, the Turkish government has seen that it was not able to send as many refugees or migrants as it thought, but still there is, the whole world and the European Union is witnessing again and again an incredible tragedy on the borders of this union, of this idea, which is also is supposed to be built, gathered around some values. So this is one of the things I would like to say. So we see, because when we talk about sanctions, it always comes to this problem as well. And this, to call it a deal later on makes everyone sick now. About what Sergey said about how realistic it is, how tangible it is to bring this freedom of expression and media freedom issue to the forefront. Yeah, I can see that. I see his point. But let me stress here, underline here, that the situation is getting worse and worse. In 2023, there will be, if not earlier, then elections again. And I mean, the level of human rights violations is increasing, and in the area of media, and we see that there are more steps being taken by the government, like recently one of the TV channels, news channels, was banned from broadcasting for 5 days. And then there's another one, and Halk TV. First it was Tele 1, Tele 1, and then now Halk TV. Both are I mean, the mainly, okay, voicing out opposition, but also starting to get more and more, how should I say, to get a wider perspective of opposition. And they were banned like this. And then they are being threatened to be closed if they get another warning or another ban. And this all happens, I mean, in a council, or I don't know, how should I call it? I forgot the name in English, but how do we call Rütük, Jörg? So this is the council of a higher.
Yeah, it's like the
for
media
radio
board.
and TV, for radio and TV,
Yeah.
to observe regulatory board exactly, for TV and radio. Yeah, and it's dominated by the government coalition. So they are taking all the decisions what the government or Mr. Erdogan wants them to take. So, and then we have the social media law. Actually, from tomorrow on, it will be set into force. And then you probably heard about it, that social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, etc., they have to have offices, and they have to, in short, obey all the instructions given by the Turkish government or Turkish justice formed by the Turkish government. If they won't do that, they will face sanctions, which won't come very easily, but in steps. And then I would like to remind you of the coming elections in 2023. No one can really guarantee fair elections without any free press left in the country, or if these channels of flow of information, free information, are blocked, like social media, because it's vital for the results, and also for people even in jail, you know, like not only for politicians, not only, I mean, they can express themselves because their views are not being reflected in the government friendly or owned media. So if these channels are blocked, you cannot guarantee a democracy in a country, or even a kind of a democracy, or, I mean, then it's a problem for the European Union too. And don't forget, now, some people, I mean, a part of the population in Turkey watching the videos published by, I mean, the government is using social media too, and the social media by the PR office of the presidency, and so they think we are in kind of the country is in a kind of a war situation, you know, like is being attacked from everywhere. And now it's time for staying and standing together against those outside forces, like European Union too, in that case. And yeah, I mean, then the European Union won't be able to express itself or really tell about its policies, neither the European Union nor the German government, in an objective way. So what people will hear in Turkey will only be government propaganda, and I don't know if it's an issue for the European Union and also for other governments, what Turkish population thinks of European Union. And well, we only have to check Eurobarometer for that. Yeah, I mean, and as a last point, maybe there are other things. I also would like to talk maybe later on how the journalists feel themselves. I mean, 77 journalists in prison, and then also those not in prison who lost their jobs, etc. I mean, they feel themselves a little bit really abandoned by the international community. If there wouldn't be such institutions like IPI, Article 19, and so on and so forth, PEN, and so on. And yeah, yeah, I mean, I can leave it there maybe, and if then anything comes to my mind, I will
just interfere, take your questions. I mean, you are actually a good example of the situation that Turkish journalists have to work under in Turkey. I mean, there was pressure being put on you, and with the consequences that you took. And we sometimes forget, even for me as a German journalist working in Turkey, that it's a totally different chat. So when you're working for Turkish media, when you're producing program that is being broadcasted or printed and published within Turkey, then actually you're under much bigger pressure.
Absolutely, and let me just add, Jörg, I mean, it just got normal for most of the journalists who are critical about anything, not only about the government, but okay, you end up being critical about the government too. So if you write about the government, critical things, then it's just normal that under all the posts you send, I mean, under every interview, commentary, etc., you get threatened, I mean, are targeted with hate speech and everything. So you just sort of get used to it.
I think Cem Özdemir also got used to it if it comes to the comments that he might get. Do you think actually, Mr. Özdemir, that we are taking too much, we consider too much this refugee deal, and this kind of restricts, you know, the German side, you know, to act towards Turkey?
Well, thank you for the question. If you allow me, I would also like to add the remarks of Suzanne Schutz and start with that. Of course, I'm very glad that Foreign Minister Maas negotiated between Turkey and Greece, and I'm sure it played its role in helping to create a frame in which both sides are willing to negotiate. But let's be frank, the main role was played by French war ships. They made sure here is a red line, and if Turkey goes 1 meter further, it will end in a disaster. And that's the reason why Turkey completely switched its position and said, we're willing to negotiate. And by the way, my feeling is the reason why Turkey is now looking for another playground in Caucasia is because they ended up in nowhere in Eastern Mediterranean. So it's the French position, it's not the German position, it was the French position that was clear, stop this and stop this now. And that was the reason why Turkey reacted. It's not because we said, don't do this, it's not very nice if you do this. So I believe this will lead us to nowhere. And I will underline this with examples. There was a former German foreign minister, Sigmar Gabriel, with whom I do not agree on many occasions. But here's one example where I think he did the right thing. That was when Turkey again came out with a long list, I think more than 600 names of individuals and companies, including Siemens, including Daimler, who were considered as supporters of terrorism. And when this list came out, he interrupted his holidays and he said the so-called Hermesbürgschaften, which is the guarantees for investments of German companies in Turkey by the German state, will be cut. That would mean that no company will take a risk with making huge investments in Turkey. In between 24 hours, Turkey reacted. The first reaction was there was never such a list, which obviously was a lie because we had that list. The second reaction was, well, this was a civil servant who, you know, was sitting during the night with his candle and then wrote a list. I mean, everybody knows nobody in Turkey will have the courage to write a list with Daimler and Siemens without the permission of Erdogan and the palace. So this is the language that Turkey understands, but you have to be able and willing to speak that language. You know, there are other examples. Obviously, none of us probably likes Mr. Trump, and we all cross fingers that this term will end in November. But Trump's reaction to Branson, remember when Branson was in prison in Turkey, the priest? This led to a reaction. Or take Russia. You know, when the Turkish airplane was shot and Russia started sanctions because of the reactions of Turkey. And then what happened? Erdogan took all the way to Russia, was like the poodle of Mr. Putin, and apologized practically, and things got changed. So this is my main message. We have to come together as Europeans, unite under one umbrella, on one position, and then be very clear. As Sergei has pointed out very rightly, sticks and carrots. So in this framework, of course, we have to talk about the customs union. This is something where Turkey wants something from us, because Turkey is strongly depending in particular on Germany, in particular in the European Union, because that's the market where Turkish companies sell their products to. So we should talk about the customs union, and then in this framework, we should make sure you want something from us, we want something from you in exchange, and that is you have to behave vis-a-vis the rules, vis-a-vis your neighbors. And the second thing, obviously, is that we have to put pressure that journalists and others who are in Turkish prisons get freed. And finally, on what Banu has said and what you have just mentioned, Jörg, vis-a-vis the refugee deal, of course, it's very difficult. There is no simple answer. Let's be honest and let's be clear here. The European position and the position of the West, including the presidency of President Obama, took the decision, right or wrong, not to in any kind interfere in Syria. That gap was filled. It was filled by Russia. It was filled by Erdogan. And they know exactly how our societies function. They sometimes know us better than we know ourselves. They know the role of refugees, and they know how you can use refugees as a tool in order to strengthen the extreme right and put into danger liberal governments. And that's what they did. Erdogan tried to repeat that recently. Remember the pictures on the Turkish-Greek border. So you have to make a decision. Either you do something in Syria, and we decided not to do anything in Syria, or then you have to accept that you need some kind of mechanisms to make sure that refugees in Turkey are safe. So I would have personally preferred a European Union and the US position saying, you know, when red lines are crossed in Syria, like using poisoning their own citizens, this red line was crossed. You remember, nothing happened, that we would have taken a different position, but we didn't do that. So that's why we're now in a very difficult position there. So to sum up, I would say, yes, we have to help Turkey, but the money needs to be used for refugees, not to stabilize the Erdogan government. And maybe we have a few more minutes to talk about the role of media, what Banu mentioned. You know, sometimes I look into the archive of what I said and others have said many years ago. I remember I was elected in 1994, first time to the German National Parliament at that time in Bonn. And if you look to old statements of mine, I was talking about the necessity of having some kind of a German-Turkish Arte. Why did I say that? Because I believed it's important to address people of Turkish origin living in Germany in their own language and not being dependent on Turkey, being dependent on changing governments in Turkey and using their own channels as propaganda tools. And that's exactly what's happening today. So therefore, I could not agree more with Banu that it's our role, it's Germany's role, and it's the role of other countries in the European Union with large Turkish communities to address these people in their own language. And we have great journalists, both grown up in Germany, of German-Turkish background, but as well people in exile from Turkey living meanwhile in Germany because of the circumstances in Turkey. And we should use that to strengthen channels like WDR, Cosmo Radio, and making that available not only in one state as in North Rhine-Westphalia, but as well in the whole country. This is very important. We're competing with Erdogan, and by the way, we're also competing with Putin about German Turks, about German Russians. We need to address these people. It's very, very crucial, creating our own media that addresses these people and informs them and not leaves Turks in Germany vis-a-vis Erdogan.
Okay, thanks so much. There's a lot of questions that actually came in from our viewers. One is directed at you, Cem Özdemir. There's a question by Arid Demirci. He asked, how do you see the attitude of the European Court of Human Rights in the sense that many cases wait for several years? Does this court still serve the Turkish people and civil society? Do you expect actually more backing, from the European Court of Human Rights?
Yes, I mean, to be brief, of course, and for many people in Turkey, this is the last hope sometimes, when you know that there's no way out with the Turkish judicial system because it's kind of mainstreamed vis-a-vis the president. This is the last hope. But when you've seen the president of the court, being in Turkey with all those kinds of pictures, that really hurts. It really, really hurts to see that. I mean, I live here, I'm safe, but try to imagine being in the shoes of those people in Turkey. If this is your last hope and then you see those pictures, that's hard.
Yeah, there's another question about.
Jörg, may I say something on the same?
Yeah, of course.
Very shortly. I mean, as a journalist, I would really like to ask him directly, the president of SPANO, of the European Court of Human Rights, if he would like to resign. I mean, if he's considering resigning, really. I mean, there are so many journalists, not only journalists, but like Osman Kavala is only one of them, or politicians, and there will be new ones. They are being prosecuted right now. Like, I mean, how can you do such a thing? And the files of these journalists, like Nedim Turfend, arrested and sentenced on false statements taken under torture, like they keep waiting every day in prison what the European Court of Human Rights is going to say. And there are some decisions about those who lost their jobs and so on after the failed coup attempt. Well, I mean, it's
if I could come in on this
I would
point.
expect the governments to do more, because it's another channel, of course, it's another platform, but I mean, these countries are also members of yeah.
I would like to come in on the European Court of Human Rights, because really the importance of the Cem Özdemir said it. It's really for many people in Turkey, but also in other countries, it's really the last hope that they have somewhere to turn to, and that they can rely on objective results or sentences. And yes, it's true that the European Court of Human Rights has passed on sentences which by many countries, Turkey included, are not being implemented. This is very unfortunate, but I think the main thing we should not forget is that there are these sentences, and that there are, for example, there was the sentence on the Kavala case, and Turkey was sentenced to release Kavala. The fact that Turkey has not yet followed this sentence is very unfortunate. And I could also mention that as the incoming chair for the Council of Europe, Germany already has the chair in the special committee on implementation of court decisions. And in this capacity, we have already made now 2 démarches with the Turkish government, and have told them that, of course, we expect Turkey to implement the sentence. So I think there is a role for the European Court of Human Rights. The fact that the president has really acted in a very not a very intelligent way. I agree, but I guess it's not my case to defend him. But he has also been on the panel of judges passing the sentences, for example, on Kavala. So this was something very insensitive of him. But I think we should not discredit the entire court and not overlook the importance of the court.
Yeah, that's an important issue. There are more questions, and one is which I find interesting, is because that's something that I experienced during the last couple of weeks and months, is that the Turkish government actually tries to approach foreign media and be more, let's say, offensive in working towards the foreign media and feeding them with informations. And the head of the press office, Fahrettin Altun, announced that there will be a department of strategic communication and crisis management, which is trying to make it more effective. So how do you actually see, this they would call it improvement, of course, of press work in Turkey. Banu, what do you think about the way that Fahrettin Altun is working towards the foreign press?
Well, of course, this is how should I say, the next step of this strategy about, they call it too, like trying to create their or reflect their own perception of things, like voicing out their own arguments, the arguments of the Turkish government and so on. Of course, every government has the right to have its own channels to foreign press, and it's up to foreign press how much it is going to take and how much is going to seen as efforts that won't pay off at the end. And of course, I mean, the credibility of the Turkish government makes things for the foreign policy even more difficult. I mean, there can be, and there are, I think, arguments in foreign policy. I'm very sorry, that's my dog. I'm very. May I just come back to you with this? I'm so sorry, I have to stop.
No problem, no problem. First, the dog needs to be calmed down. Another question here was whether if we stop talking about EU membership of Turkey, would this actually weaken the position in order to, influence Turkey's politics at all? Mrs. Schutz, I think it's obvious. I mean, we need to keep this line open, or what do you think?
Yes, I can only support what Sergei Lagodinsky said. Once the membership will be reversed, and then this candidate status will be reversed, then there will not be a second chance. I think we all remember how difficult it was actually to get that far, and there were many strings attached, and still there's this declaration in the visa liberalization issue, which for which Turkey has not fulfilled the 72 conditions in order. I think we should not take a decision as drastic as that. Keep the candidate status open, but of course we have to make sure what the standards are for a candidate and what we expect for Turkey to actually go further in its relationship with the European Union. And there's the carrot and the stick issue was mentioned, the customs union and the visa liberalization issue. There are certain issues where Turkey would really like to see the EU being more forthcoming, and that's why we said, well, we're ready to talk about all these issues, but of course there are certain conditions, and of course we need also an EU that supports this. And it was mentioned earlier, you mentioned that there are some countries who openly say that they want to stop the candidate status for Turkey. There are others who are saying basically that they do not want a normalization of relations. So this is where we are, and this is why we're trying to argue that better than sanctions is a dialogue, but this is not to say that the dialogue will last forever.
I'm back again, Jörg. I mean, I am very sorry for all panelists and participants. So it happens, like the door rang and then, she got out of control. What I was trying to say was, Jörg, there are also some arguments of the Turkish government, of Turkish foreign policy, but because of the very hostile attitudes of the government itself, again, the government has problems in voicing or in really making it possible to tell the foreign media and also public opinion, what it is about, for example, in the Aegean. It's a problem. I mean, it has not been solved for decades. And yeah, I mean, there should be meetings and talks between two parts and so on, but because it wasn't solved, it came to that position, to this very odd situation. So, I mean, but the messages they are giving there, I don't know what kind of language they are using with you, with foreign press, because I'm not in the group, obviously. I don't know that, but the messages they give from their own channels directly to the Turkish public is something which takes the whole public opinion further away from European Union perspective, maybe.
I mean, another issue that we can talk about is how do you see the fact that actually the number of imprisoned journalists came down to 77, as you already mentioned in the beginning, from 170. So the number of imprisoned journalists has come down, and you can see that as, you know, like appeasement policy also towards the foreign countries. Do you think that, you know, also the number of, let's say, political prisoners has practically decreased? So there's not that many German citizens, for example, which are being held in Turkey like it happened before. Do you see this actually as a success of this, let's say, pressure put on Turkey in order to come forward on that issue? Would you say so?
Well, the issue with German citizens, partly it was a result of some negotiations. We know that in, let's say, regarding bigger names, or like, I mean, journalist Deniz Yücel, and I don't know what the background of the whole negotiation was about Meşale Tolu, or the rights defenders, or I mean, who were arrested in Büyükada, on Princess Islands and so on. But I have to remind you that Meşale Tolu's case is still going. I mean, still continuing. And her husband was also deprived from his freedom on many measures. I mean, he was not able to leave the country for a long time. So, I mean, to Turkey, so they were separated. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But this is,
no, you're right.
So there are not too many German citizens. One of them was in house arrest, so she got free of house arrest. I saw your actually piece on that, but it shouldn't make the German government. It shouldn't mean that the German government should relax about this, because also looking at the numbers now, I mean, if we check IPI numbers, we see 77 journalists still in jail. Some of them, I mean, others before, in recent months, were freed because they were long enough in prison. Their sentences were served. They served their time, but still, although they had served their time, they were not let go, you know, like so easily. It took like weeks and months for some to get released, and this is a breach of law, actually. So, and there were others who, with help of decisions of European Court of Human Rights, were released. But then there are others who are not being released, like Ahmet Altan. I mean, we cannot see it as a gesture because there are new arrests. Like today, we see the mayor of one of the cities of Kars. He's going to resign in protest because he has been arrested with others because of some allegations going back 6 years ago. So the number will increase again, or it may decrease. I don't know, but it doesn't mean anything. For example, very soon we are going to have another case against Müyesser Yıldız. This is a journalist who is, I mean, really investigative journalist and so on. And what she's critical about the foreign policy of Turkey and writes about some details. And she got into jail. And I mean, the reason why they take people, arrest people, journalists or politicians or any people, don't have to be the same reasons for their arrests. I mean, they arrest them on the basis of other allegations later on. So it is a totally mess. I mean, there is no improvement there, not at all.
Cem Özdemir already mentioned the importance of, let's say, Turkish language media services that are being produced, abroad, like your programs as well. I mean, what is the feedback that you get, and how do you see the influence and impact that actually your program has, on the people in Turkey?
I'm going to talk in more general terms. Like there is a long tradition of Turkish broadcasting in Germany. First of all, people also in Turkey, also the government in Turkey should understand that, because I mean, people from Turkey live here. So especially these public broadcasters like Deutsche Welle and WDR had their own programs. For example, Köln Radyosu was, how should I say, must listen for the for people of Turkish origin here in Germany. Now things have changed while we are doing more online. Deutsche Welle Turkish is a very, very important news channel online. They are also having their own broadcasts now every day, and I'm a freelancer mainly. I'm also writing regularly, weekly for them in Turkish, but sometimes also in German, I do it. And so there's a lot of interaction. I mean, a lot of hate speech. We always take it granted. So we are being accused of being traitors, whatever, and you're paid by the German government and blah, blah. I mean, incredible things are written there. No, actually, journalists in these channels are being, like in TRT, by the people, by those who are in need of getting some information. And what I do for WDR Cosmo is like, as a gesture of support for the journalists who had lost their jobs in 2016 after the failed coup attempt. Like the channel where I was working was closed. There was a police raid and so on and so forth. I'm talking about Image TV. And then I was able to work there in a project called Turkey Uncensored. And then I stopped and I continue now. I mean, they didn't know exactly what to do, but they started to keep the name because, me, Can, and also other journalists are trying to voice or bring the issues which are really important in Turkey to the forefront. And also, I'm also asked to do something for the public here in Germany who have these ties, who live in Germany, who grew up in Germany, maybe like from families of Turkish origin and so on, from Turkey, but they speak in German. So I'm somehow in a position bringing up issues which are important in Turkey, but as well as in Germany, or also only sometimes things which are important to the people here in Germany of Turkish origin. It's a bit complicated, but I think it's a very, very important channel to work on.
Okay, we're already coming towards the end of our discussion, I have to say. So let's have some final remarks of Mrs.
Jörg,
Schutz.
I forgot to tell you something.
Jemison.
May I? I'm
Right.
sorry. I should also mention Tats Gazete, I believe, because they also supported the Turkish writing journalists.
Okay.
And they also translated it into, I mean, they published in both languages. And yeah, it was a very good support to what we Turkish journalists have seen from Germany, from their German counterparts, and especially also what in 2017, what Mr. Sigmar Gabriel said, there should be some more support to those people who need to be in Germany at the moment. I mean, in terms of visa, etc. These were very, very important, but Turkish journalists feel themselves, or journalists from Turkey, not only Turkish journalists, Kurdish journalists, feel themselves a little bit abandoned, maybe recently, in terms of this support from its counterparts.
Okay, let's also have some final remarks of Mrs. Schutz and Cem Özdemir. So Cem, what are you hoping for? If it comes to support, for Turkish journalists like Banu and others, also looking at the summit tomorrow.
Microphone.
Sorry, now you can hear me. I don't want to repeat what Banu has just said. Let me just add, the name of Can Dündar was already mentioned. I'm going to meet him in the next hours. I mean, have in mind that even in Germany, he's not safe. When he jumps into a cab, there are cab drivers, unfortunately, threatening him because they think that they have to kind of defend the honor of Erdogan or whatsoever. So we have to make sure that the long arm of Erdogan has no place in this society. And everybody who lives in this country has to understand there is just one constitution, and that's the constitution of this country. It's not Erdogan's constitution, it's not Putin's constitution or whatsoever. And there I would wish that my government, the German government, and the Länder governments are a bit more clear and outspoken and leave no backdoor. If you live here, you have to understand the rules, and you cannot threaten anybody who lives in this country because these people are not safe in the country where they came from. As you know, even the property now is probably getting confiscated soon of Can Dündar and his wife. So this is the situation in which a lot of people in exile are living in this country. So one part of the answer should be that we guarantee the security of these people in Germany and give Turkey a message which they cannot overhear, that we will not accept any kind of interference. And having said that, it should also be clear that we make sure that Turkey understands, and the Turkish government understands, that people like me, of coming from a so-called Turkish guest worker family, my parents moved in the 60s from Turkey to Germany and helped to raise German economy. And now I'm living here, I have children and following generations. We belong to this country. We don't want to be the fifth column of Mr. Erdogan. And this is the next thing we have to make Mr. Erdogan understand, that every kind of interference via mosques, via media, via his trolls, whatever, are not acceptable. Have in mind, just recently, it was our state government in Baden-Württemberg banning the so-called Germania, the so-called motorcycle, I would call them terrorists, being involved in all kinds of organized crime and being like the military arm of Mr. Erdogan. It took us too much time and too long to ban this organization, bring them to court, as my home state has done it. To finalize, I would like to underline what Suzanne Schutz has said about the membership talks. They're frozen right now, but our message should be clear. We criticize the government and the regime. We do not criticize the people of Turkey. We do not criticize the country. Of course, all those people who voted in favor of the Democrats in the last local elections, they belong to us. They belong to Europe. They have their place in Europe. So we should be very precise in our formulations. Yes, we criticize the regime, we criticize that government, and we want to have hard talk vis-a-vis that government, but we do not criticize the country. a democratic Turkey has its place in Europe. Erdogan doesn't. Thank you. Thank you again for making this possible.
Thanks so much. Cem, let's give the final word to Mrs. Schutz. Cem Özdemir just mentioned it. The threat that exiled Turkish citizens are under abroad. We just got the message of an exiled Turkish journalist being physically attacked in Sweden, and there are other cases. So what can you tell us about these the situation and also on the work of the Turkish Secret Service MIT in Germany? Is that something that you also raise when you talk, with Turkish delegates in Brussels the recent days?
Well, this is another subject, and I believe this is not really the right subject for a closing word. All I can say is that, of course, there are the service or the security services in Germany watching this, and of course, if there is someone's security threatened in Germany, then this is something that has to be followed up. I think coming back to the issue of press and human rights, it is incredibly important that we remain outspoken and vocal about it. And you mentioned the strategic communication that the Turkish government is trying to reach out for journalists. I think this could be a sign that they are aware and that they want to avoid bad press. Maybe. So I mean, I'm not going to say that we will be able to solve or to solve the problems with human rights issues with Turkey in a short term. We have to remain outspoken. We have to also use the international fora that are available. We have to try to maintain dialogue, but we also have to be aware, of course, that we need some response from Turkey, indicating that they're ready to also make amends from the Turkish side.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Schutz. Thank you, Banu Güven, and thank you, Cem Özdemir, for taking part in this webinar. It was a pleasure having you. Let me just tell you and inform you about an upcoming event next week. So IPI will have high-level meetings organized in the Press Freedom Mission. The next one will be next week, when delegates from certain human rights organizations like Article 19, Human Rights Watch, and others will have the chance to meet and discuss with members of the Turkish government, Constitutional Court, Justice Ministry, and others. So this will take place next week. Join if you like. And thanks again to all the participants here on this webinar. It was a pleasure talking to you. All the best, and have a nice evening. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jörg.